Alright, Touhou Project. It's one of my favorite series of all time. I mean, look at my backpack. You can see some Touhou Project girls there. All that BS aside, I haven't really taken a look at the game's story, since, all I cared about was the music and characters for the longest time. So, I decided to read up on the game's main stories and, whoa. I think it's worth sharing in a video. Now, just some heads up here, I won't be including the PC98 storyline, mostly because it's still up in the air whether if it's canon or not, as there are some continuity errors, plot holes, or whatever they're called. I consider them in some sort of separate universe, like how Phantom Blood and Steel Ball Run are in different universes in JoJo, but I mean, that's just my opinion. I also won't be including side games like Scarlet Weather Rhapsody or Gobopyo Ippon or whatever that's called, as they would make this video a bit too long and, I'll be honest, they aren't really worth mentioning here. I will be covering all the main games from Embodiment of Scarlet Devil to Unidentified Fantastic Object, as the rest of the games will be in part 2. With all that aside, let's begin. Now, the story begins in the Embodiment of Scarlet Devil, where Shrine Miko Reimu Hakure and magician Marisa Kirisame were just living their lives until a mysterious red mist forms around the land against Sokyo, which makes the land cold and just blocks out the sun. It probably doesn't sound bad until you realize that the red mist can enter the human world and probably cause some chaos there. So our heroes have to stop it. Now, for each character in the game, there are different scenarios, but it's just different text and all that between the characters. So just assume that I'm using the Reimu scenario unless I say so otherwise. At first, Reimu is traveling through the night until they encounter Rumia. She's a rather weak yokai, so she gets defeated. Later on, they go to the massive lake where Reimu has a difficult time navigating until she finds Surno, or Chirino, whatever she's called, who is the strongest fairy. Apparently Reimu had a higher power level, so she was defeated. Reimu later on goes to the island where the Scarlet Devil mansion is on, and they find the guard, Hong Meiling, and follows her to the entrance. Later on, beats her up. And then Hong Meiling shows Reimu the way inside the mansion. Later on, she enters the mansion and encounters Pachulia and Koakuma in the magic library. And again, they get defeated because plot lines. We learn in Marisa's scenario that she likes to take books from the library, and I assume that she never returns them because, she likes her books. Which is a massive L for Patchouli, but anyway. Then we enter the hallway, and we meet Dio in girl form, Sakuya Isayoi. She's the maid for the mysterious mistress, and she doesn't want anyone to go and see her, as she prefers the dark. After that, they fight Sakuya, but her stand was not enough to defeat Reimu, so she moves on to the mistress's room, where we found out that it is Ramilla Scarlet. She's apparently a vampire who started out this whole incident. She tries to beat up Reimu, but it's futile, and she got defeated and the sky went back to normal. Later on, Ramilla visited a Hakure shrine to walk around with Reimu and Marisa, and then they all noticed that a storm is brewing specifically around the mansion, and they were like, oh my goodness, what is this? Ramilla couldn't enter back in the mansion, mostly due to Patchouli reigning around the mansion for a certain special someone. Reimu and Marisa go and bust a fat one in the mansion to find a certain special someone. They fight Patchouli again, and later on find a special someone. Her name? Flandra Scarlet. She's a vampire who can't walk on the rain and also has the most popular demon in the entire fandom. Plus, she hasn't went out in 495 years, so she decides to go play Danmaku with Reimu, where Reimu later wins and says to Flandra, "Go home, man." And Flandra's like, "But this is my home though." Yeah, Reimu kinda acts like an ass here, but she just wanted Ramilla gone from bothering her shrine. But that's kinda the end of the Scarlet Devil story here, but that's only the beginning of the series. We continue our story in the next game, Perfect Cherry Blossom, where it's already May and it's still snowing like it's January. Pretty unfortunate for our lads. Reimu and Marisa wanted this to end, but Sakuya also joins to investigate as winter supplies are running out at the mansion. And, I mean, she doesn't want to deal with Ramilla. We're gonna go with Reimu's scenario here. She travels out and then finds Letty, who then later defeats her. Yeah, Letty isn't really that exciting, so we later go find Chen, the cat in Mayohiga, which is some sort of abandoned house fight against Sokyo barrier, but whatever. Then Chen later says the typical, "oh, go away" type rhetoric, then gets defeated. Later on, we meet Alice Murgatroyd, who is actually one of the only few characters to come back from the PC-98 extinction, where she says, "hey, it's been a while." And Reimu was like, "man, we only just met." Alice knows power, as she could control many dolls like her puppets. It was futile though. Our crew follows the cherry petals from the clouds until we find the Prism River sisters, and they're assemble. Their theme song is pretty cool, but they got defeated anyway, because nerd. We later find the staircase of Hakugokoru, where we later find the best character of all time, Yomoko Paku, who is a half-human, half-gore swordswoman. We later find out that there is a tree, Saigyo Hayakashi, that never blooms in spring. Now that will be important later, so keep in mind. Speaking of later, Yomo gets DE_destroyed by the crew, and later we enter the Netherworld where we encounter Yugo Saigyoji, who is a ghost princess of Hakugokoru in the Netherworld. She wants to resurrect a corpse beneath the tree, but after she gets defeated, she just decides to live out her regular ass existence as a ghost. After that, life in spring seemed to return to normal, but we know that this is just some false hope. Reimu the gang likes to view the flowers at the shrine, but also sees a lot of ghosts at the shrine not leaving donations, which leaves her in a bit of an annoyance. The strangest thing is that humans started entering Ginsokia due to the border being rippled. The crew travel back to the Netherworld and find out who is behind this slaughter. The crew travel back to the Netherworld to find who is behind this slander, and later encounter Ran Yakumo, who is a pretty powerful Shikigami. She was guarding her master and she was hibernating. Reimu later finds Ran and realized that the master was not in the Netherworld area, so she basically beat up Ran for nothing. Now Reimu approaches the Phantasm area at the Gensokyo border, where we meet this one sage, whatever it's called, Yukari Yakumo. She was just trying to tear a hole in the barrier, as her stand is boundary manipulation, so it's pretty powerful, which is pretty bad for us. Reimu decided to go and stop her, and after a long battle, I assume that Yukari just went to sleep and fixed the barrier later on, which concludes the story of Perfect Cherry Blossom. Alright, let's move on to our next installment, and my favorite game of them all, Imperishable Night. The Moon Festival began and people are celebrating until they realize that the moon was actually a fake and was missing a piece. So our crew decides to go on an adventure to find a culprit. It's worth pointing out that there are 4 scenarios in this game, so I'm just going to stick with Reimu's scenario, who for whatever reason is teaming up with Yukari. They travel along the forest path, beginning their journey until they meet Wriggle the Nightbug, who has an underrated theme, and Mystia Lorere, whatever it's called, who also has an awesome theme too. Unfortunately, Reimu and Yukari are the heroes of the story, so Wriggle and Mystia were killed off. The team approaches the human village where they find Kane, who mistakes the team for being bad guys. They later beat up Kane and go to the bamboo forest where they encounter Marisa, who wonders why the other team is using magic to stop time and causing the Imperishable Night. Now, the reason why they stopped time was so they can go to the moon and just fix this whole problem before it gets worse. So they beat up Marisa and then later on enter the mansion of Ainte, which is guarded by moon rabbits. 2 notable moon rabbits, Tay and Raisin, who are guarding the mansion from any intruders. 2 moon rabbits, Tay and Raisin, are guarding that mansion from any intruders. After the 2 moon rabbits were defeated, there were 2 paths to take, either the Aaron path or the Kaguya path. In the Aaron path, the crew goes to beat her up, and they discover that she placed a spell on the Earth to prevent Lunarians from visiting the Earth, and the crew were fooled into going to the fake moon, which is a massive L. But the crew got the W again as they beat up Aaron. Later, if you choose the real moon path or play the game for a second time, you get to meet the true mastermind, the true puppet master behind it all, Kaguya Horaison, who apparently has the ability of manipulating eternity and the instantaneous, which is powerful like her bangs. Kaguya challenges the team for 5 impossible requests, which are just spell cards in the game and just random crap that I wouldn't want. After she gets beaten up, the crew returns to home and finally enjoyed the full moon as it returned back to normal. However, Kaguya returned to challenge the team to a quote-unquote trial of guts. though her real intentions were rather unclear. They meet Kane but Green, later beat her up as she tried to stop them, and then kept going. They later find Moko no Fujiwara, a human with immortality, as she drank the infamous Horai elixir. She also reveals that Kaguya sent them to kill her. So the crew just did that. Not to kill her, but just defeat her and grab some flesh as proof. And that's where our story ends. For now. Phantasmagoria of Flower Review has 16 scenarios, one for each character. Yikes, but the story is actually really simple. The characters are at Misty Lake enjoying their time until they see some unusually blooming flowers. And then for whatever scenario you choose, the characters either go out of personal duty to investigate, out of curiosity to investigate, or out of boredom, which is, let's be real, it's an excuse to beat up people, which I'm cool with. After beating up many familiar figures and newcomers Komachi and Iki, it was later figured out that the flower blooming occurs once every 60 years. And every 60 years in the outside world, many human ghosts come to visit Gensokyo, and are the reason behind the bloom. So, it was just not a concern. Now we move on to the next actual Touhou game in Mountain of Faith, where a stranger comes to visit Reimu's shrine, where they said that it should close down due to a quote-unquote lack of faith. Reimu got a little anger in knowing her faith in Jesus Christ, so she decides to go out to see why is this, why was this. And Maurice was like, hey, you know what, man, I'll come too, so I got nothing to do. When they were traveling, they encountered Shizuaki Minoriko Aki at the bottom of the mountain, who have very underrated names, I swear, but also got beat up. Higher on the mountain in the forest, they encountered Hina Kageyama, who has Gyro Zeppeli's ability to spin. Too bad for Reimu and or Marisa, they know how to counter spin, so Hina's gone. At the base of the mountain, there is the untrodden valley, where an engineering kappa, Nitori Kawashiro, lives. Nitori got defeated, but told Reimu to defeat the god of the mountain. Knowing how violent Reimu Marisa is, she agrees and keeps climbing the mountain. She meets up with Momiji, a Touhou Fairy's favorite character, and Aya, the Tengu who loves photography and I believe it's Zun's favorite character. They make a deal that if the crew wins, Aya must show where the god of the mountain is. If Aya wins, then the crew must leave. The team of course wins because plot device, and she essentially continues on. Finally, the crew reaches the top of the mountain where they collect as much faith for Gensokyo as possible, and encounter Green Reimu, aka Sanai Kochiya, who apparently can perform miracles. Well, she did perform a miracle, as she got defeated by the team. Later on, they went on to find Kanako Yasuka, who has the ability of creating heavenliness, I think that's the word. So she basically is just the maid in heaven stand in part 6. It was revealed that Kanako only wanted to gain as many followers as possible. So basically she was like every Instagram user, which is why Reimu's shrine got less followers. So the team beat up Kanako and talked her into peaceful resolution. Everything was almost back to normal, except it wasn't. They heard rumors that there was another god at the mountain, so the team decided to go once again, where they meet up with Suwawako Mori, who is also my favorite. I mean, literally, she's on my channel banner, my profile picture. What else do you want? And by the way, she's the other god at the mountain shrine. Suwawako claimed that the shrine used to be hers, but she lost it from Kanako after some time, probably after like a Yu-Gi-Oh duel or something. But after she got defeated, she talked about having a festival and wonders if she can host it at Reimu's shrine. She thinks about it, but she just wanted to go home. Suwawako tells her that if Kanako is causing more trouble, then come back to her. Now I'm going to point that out because, yeah, the next story, trust me, you're going to hear the next story. In Subterranean Animism, which is for some reason the Touhou fandom's favorite game, everything was normal until a geyser erupts and forms a hot spring around Reimu's shrine. There were many earth spirits around it, and Reimu and Marisa decided to build a spa in the spring. But the yokai were a bit suspicious about where these earth spirits came from. Reimu and Marisa were contracted to go underground with a device to communicate with the people above ground. Reimu decides to go underground and encounters Yamame, who is a spider but isn't really a threat. But Yukari treats her as one and made Yamame angry. Reimu later travels deeper into the middle of nowhere where a stranger asks her where the former capital is. That stranger is Parse, who can control jealousy, aka that's my stand. Parse got jealous at Reimu for the hot springs and attacked, but she failed, obviously. Then Reimu found the former capital, and an Oni challenges her to a fight. Her name is Yugi, who looks pretty buff. Yukari then talks to her saying, oh, you take bad care of the earth spirits, and Reimu just told Yukari to stop worsening the situation. Of course, Yugi gets angry and then fights and loses to Reimu, so that she can just move on. Reimu reaches the Palace of the Earth Spirits, where she finds a yokai who can read her mind. Ooh, we got Rohan, and her name was Satori Komeiji. Satori revealed that the geyser incident was caused by one of her, quote-unquote, pets. Reimu then defeats her and moves on further on the ground, where it is extremely hot. Reimu then finds the same cat she found from above Palace. It turned out that the cat was Rin. She knew what Reimu was doing and does not want her going deeper. Of course, Rin got defeated and gave Reimu some luck to go deeper underground, where she encounters another pet of Satori, a nuclear crow named Utsuho, who has the power to manipulate nuclear fusion. Okay, this is cool. It also has a giant art cannon, which is also cool. Ooh. She's one who takes care of the Hellfires and is the one suspected of doing the incident. So Reimu fights and defeats her. It was recently learned that Kanako was the one who gave Utsuho the power of nuclear fusion, which is basically just a way of Kanako to flex her power. And I mean, remember Mountain of Faith where Suwawako says that, hey, Kanako might be causing more trouble, so maybe you should come back to me? This is why. Reimu decides to go to Moria's shrine for more information, where she finds Senai, and Senai tells Reimu that Kanako was behind the incident. Oh, we found the culprit. So Reimu sets off to find Kanako, but she then encounters Koichi Komeiju, who is literally the most popular fandom character in Touhou for whatever reason. I really don't understand her. But anyway, Koichi knows that Reimu is strong, as she defeated her sister Satori. Koichi challenges Reimu to a fight, where she agrees. Then she gets beaten up, where she wanted a power of love for her pets. Later we found out that Kanako wanted to make a nuclear power plant, and the geyser was just part of the plan. And seeing as it was a success, the yokai were now okay with Kanako's greater plan for green energy. And I mean, I know my friend Grant's a fan of green energy, so nice. Massive W. The next story starts in the spring, where the snow starts to melt. There's apparently a UFO flying around, and Reimu, Marisa, and Senai believe it to be a treasure ship, so they chase after it. Nazarin, who's also searching for the ship and already collected some parts of the ship. The crew defeats her and move on. She doesn't really have that much plot relevance. And then the crew encounter Kogasa, who has a pretty funky umbrella, but she has no relevance to the plot. So defeat her and move on to the treasure ship, where the crew get on, and then they encounter Ichirin and Unsan, the guards of the ship from various yokai. They of course deny that there's treasure on the ship, but for plot convenience, the crew beat up Ichirin and Unsan, and so move on in the ship. Later in the boat, they find Murasa, who's the captain of the boat, and reveal that the ship is going to Makai, which is hell in this universe. The crew react poorly to that, and I mean, would you enjoy taking a boat to hell? I wouldn't. Murasa fights the crew and gets some of the fragments they have gotten from Nazarin, but failed. The crew lands in Makai, where they find Nazarin again, who is testing out a pagoda before giving it to Shaw. They later beat the two out of them and break a seal in Hawkeye for whatever reason. That seal revealed Byakuren, who appeared to be an ally at first, but after some words, she fights against the crew. After she got defeated, the crew leaves Makai and return home. Marisa then opens a UFO where she finds a snake inside. Then the UFO changes into a simple piece of wood. Those were the actual fragments of the floating vault, and that's what the humans saw, just wood. So basically these UFOs were just stands. But anyway, they find out that Nue Holju, who can make objects unidentifiable, was behind the incident, so basically her ability is making stands. That's incredible. She placed the Seeds of Unknown Form around the places on the floating vault, and so the crew began their battle and won against Nue. Reimu decides not to kill Nue, but Marisa learned more about her, and Senai got a photo taken of herself and Nue by Aya. Later, all the game bosses fly around the ship for a while before settling into Human Village and decide to turn the ship into a museum, which was pretty popular, so good for them. And that's where I'm going to end this part of the video. For part 2, I'm going to talk about games through 13 through 18, so yeah. The reason why I stopped at 12 is because I think 12 is a good transition point between 11 and 13, as honestly, Touhou 11 was kind of the end of the classic era. 12 kind of felt like the start of the new era, but it still had fragments of the old game. I mean, we got Nazarene, she sounds like Nazareth, but yeah, that's where I'm going to end this video for now. So yeah, adios.